3 days before Thanksgiving, I stood in my parents' kitchen doorway, mud still caked on my boots from the morning feed, when I heard something that shocked me to my bones. I'd driven 2 hours to drop off fresh eggs and vegetables from my farm, things they never thanked me for but always expected. That's when I heard my sister Imelda's voice cutting through the hallway like glass. "Mom, I'm serious. She cannot be here Thursday. Fred's coming, and I need him to see us as refined. Not some backwoods family with a sister who smells like chicken manure." The words landed heavy in my chest, but I didn't move. I just stood there, frozen, listening. My mother's response came softer, more careful. "Imelda, that's your sister. We can't just—" "Yes, we can," Imelda interrupted. "Tell her we're keeping it small this year. Tell her anything. Just keep her away." I heard my father clear his throat, that sound he makes when he's about to agree with something he knows is wrong. Florence does have that earthy quality about her. Maybe it's for the best. I backed out quietly, boots silent on the porch. The cold Pennsylvania air bit my face as I walked to my truck, hands trembling as I gripped the steering wheel. I couldn't believe my family was planning to cut me out of Thanksgiving just because they were embarrassed by my career. For a moment, I just sat there in the driveway, staring at the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to march back inside and demand they say it to my face. But another part, the part that had spent years smoothing over every uncomfortable moment, every dismissive comment, knew it wouldn't matter. They'd already decided who I was. The embarrassing one. The one who didn't fit. I'd been bending myself into smaller and smaller shapes trying to earn a place at their table, and it still wasn't enough. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just drove the 2 hours back to my small farm outside Lancaster, the road blurring slightly as the sun dropped behind bare November trees. At the time, I didn't know that the very man my sister was desperate to impress would one day stand on my farm and see me more honestly than my own family ever tried to. My name is Florence Brown. I'm 27 years old, and I raise chickens, grow vegetables, and manage a small organic farm that my family has never once visited. They call it playing in dirt. I call it survival. To them, success looks like Imelda's marketing job in Philadelphia, office clothes, city sophistication, carefully curated social media posts. My calloused hands and sun-weathered face don't fit that picture. But here's what they don't talk about at their dinner parties. Every month for the past 3 years, I've quietly transferred money to cover their overdue electric bills, their property taxes, their HOA fees. My father's back surgery last year? I paid half. Imelda's car repairs? Me. They take it without acknowledgement, as if my farm, the one they mock, doesn't generate the income that keeps their lights on. The next morning, my phone buzzed while I was collecting eggs. A text from my mother. The farm was quiet, except for the clucking hens and the occasional rustle of wind through bare branches. I picked up my phone and there it was. A demand from my mother. "Hi, sweetheart. Could you help with Thanksgiving costs this year? About $350 would be wonderful. The turkey alone is so expensive now." I stared at the screen, yolk warm in my palm, the hen clucking softly beside me. They were going to take my money and still cut me out. I wanted to see if they'd actually go through with it. I transferred the money. No message. Just sent it. Wednesday evening came cold and sharp. I was mending a fence post when my phone rang, my mother's name lighting up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Florence, honey." Her voice had that practiced sweetness she uses when delivering bad news. "I wanted to call before tomorrow. We've decided to keep Thanksgiving very intimate this year. Just the four of us and Imelda's boyfriend, Fred. You understand, don't you?" The hammer slipped from my hand, thudding into the frozen grass. "You're uninviting me." "Don't put it like that. It's just, Imelda really needs this dinner to go well. Fred comes from a very particular background, and we want to present our family in the best light. And I don't fit that light." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the wind rattling through the barn behind me. When she spoke again, her voice had hardened. "Don't make this difficult, Florence. Family means supporting each other's needs. You took my money for the turkey 2 days ago," I said quietly. Apparently you want my wallet, just not me. I hung up. The sky had gone dark purple, stars beginning to prick through. I stood there holding the phone long after the call ended, my breath visible in the cold air. It wasn't the exclusion itself that cut deepest. It was the ease with which she said it. No hesitation. No apology. Just a decision already made, delivered like a weather report. I'd spent years believing that if I just helped enough, gave enough, proved my worth enough, they'd finally see me. But standing there in the November dark, I realized something. They did see me. They just saw me as useful, not valuable. And maybe that was a kind of freedom, knowing that nothing I did would ever change their minds. For the first time in years, something inside me didn't bend. It snapped clean. Saturday morning arrived with frost covering everything in silver. I was scattering feed for the chickens when my phone rang. Juliet, my cousin, the only family member who'd ever driven out to see the farm. Florence, I need to tell you what happened Thursday. Her voice was tight with anger. I straightened, cold air burning my lungs. Go ahead. Your mother and Imelda, they told everyone at dinner that you chose not to come. That you felt your lifestyle was too different from ours. That you didn't want to embarrass the family in front of Fred. Imelda actually said you were too rural and unpolished for their gathering. The feed bucket slipped from my grip, scattering grain across the dirt. Chickens rushed forward, oblivious. They said I chose not to come? They painted you as the one who created the distance. Fred looked uncomfortable the whole time, but he didn't know the truth. I'm so sorry, Florence. I should have said something. After we hung up, I stood in the cold for a long time, watching my breath cloud the air. The chickens pecked at the scattered grain, unconcerned. The world kept moving, but something in me had shifted. It wasn't just the exclusion anymore, it was the rewriting of reality. They'd taken my absence, the one they demanded, and turned it into my shame, my choice, my failure. And suddenly I understood. This was who they'd always been. I'd just been too busy trying to earn their approval to see it clearly. The resentment I'd swallowed for years wasn't anger. It was grief. Grief for the family I thought I had, the one that never actually existed. They didn't just exclude me. They rewrote the story to make me the villain. But something shifted in that moment. Not anger, something quieter. Determination. If they were ashamed of my farm, then I'd make this farm impossible to ignore. That evening, I finally filled out an application for the Pennsylvania Community Agriculture Initiative grants, training, media exposure for young farmers. I'd looked at it before, but never felt worthy enough. I sank into the kitchen chair, laptop open, fingers resting on the keys. Each part of the application demanded careful thought, project plans, budgets, personal statements, but this time I wrote for myself, not to impress anyone else. With every word, I felt the weight of years spent working, learning, and building on my own. Excitement stirred quietly, steady, like the first warmth of morning sun over the fields. This wasn't just a form to fill. It was a claim on the life I wanted to build, a declaration that my work, my farm, and my vision mattered. 4 days later, my mother's text came through while I was repairing the greenhouse. Florence, Imelda needs braces. The orthodontist quoted $4,500. Can you help? She starts her new job soon and needs to look her best. I read it twice, deleted it, then set my phone face down and went back to work. An hour later, Florence, did you see my message? I didn't respond. That evening, headlights swept across my driveway. I looked out to see my mother's sedan, Imelda climbing out of the passenger side. They walked to my door with purpose, shoulders squared. I opened it before they could knock. We need to talk about the money, my mother said, stepping inside without invitation. Imelda followed, arms crossed, that familiar look of entitlement on her face. There's nothing to talk about, I said quietly. Florence, don't be childish. My mother's tone sharpened. Your sister needs this. It's an investment in her future. An investment. The words tasted bitter. Like how my farm is an investment. Or is it still just dirt under fingernails? Imelda scoffed. Here we go. Playing the victim again. Something in me went very still. You told everyone I chose not to come to Thanksgiving because I was too embarrassed. You took my money for that dinner and then lied about me to a table full of family. My mother's face flushed. We were protecting your dignity. You were protecting your image. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You've been spending money I made from the work you're ashamed of. You can't have it both ways. Florence and Brown, you do not turn your back on family. My mother's voice cracked with indignation. Family doesn't turn their backs first, I said. I need you to leave. Imelda's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had nothing to say. They left in silence, car taillights disappearing down the dark road. I locked the door and pressed my forehead against the cold wood, breathing slowly. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt a sense of freedom and courage from standing up to them. A month later, I received some good news. It was an email. I'd been selected as the featured story for the Community Agriculture Initiative. A video crew would document my farm, my methods, my journey, shared across their entire network. The crew came on a crisp December morning. They filmed me feeding chickens, harvesting winter greens, and explaining my sustainable practices. When the video went live 2 weeks later, everything changed. Messages flooded in, neighbors, schools wanting tours, restaurants seeking partnerships. Local news picked it up. Then regional outlets. Within days, a private investment firm reached out offering $300,000 to expand operations. New greenhouses, equipment, infrastructure for educational programs. I sank onto the old wooden bench outside the greenhouse, hands trembling slightly as I read the email again. I couldn't believe my eyes. But it was real. I read the email over and over again. The late morning sun warmed my shoulders, birds flitting across the bare trees. My heart raced, but the excitement was quiet, steady, like the slow bloom of spring shoots. For the first time, the years of effort, grit, and patience felt seen and valued. For the first time in my life, I could see a future that didn't involve scraping by. My father called the day after the investment news broke. I almost didn't answer. Florence, we saw the news. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. We always knew you had something special. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. You didn't call to congratulate me, Dad. You called because now it's safe to be associated with me. That's not fair. I hung up gently. There was no anger left, just clarity. I didn't know it yet, but in just a few days, someone I didn't expect to ever see would show up at my doorstep. It was a cold Saturday afternoon. He pulled up to the farm in a modest sedan. He sat in the car for a long moment before stepping out, like he was gathering courage. He was tall, clean-cut, with kind eyes and an easy smile that didn't quite reach his face. I didn't recognize him and felt a little strange at his unannounced visit. He approached the farm stand where I was arranging produce, hands in his pockets, movements careful. "Hi, are you Florence?" he asked. "I am. Can I help you?" Something in his tone made my shoulders tense slightly. Not threat, but purpose. "I'm interested in learning more about your farm. How did you get started? Do you have family support?" The question landed strangely, too specific. But I talked to him the way I talk to all visitors. Openly, honestly, without bitterness. I explained my methods, my challenges, my hopes for expansion. I didn't mention my family's rejection. It wasn't his burden to carry. As I gave him a tour of the farm, the crisp air carried the earthy scent of tilled soil and hay. Frost crunched under his shoes as he walked beside me, and I noted the careful way he studied the rows of winter greens, hands tucked into his pockets. I could feel the tension coiled in my shoulders, the pulse at my temple quickening. And yet, there was a sincerity in his gaze that made me want to listen, to speak without defense, to let him see the life I had built. After 20 minutes, he paused, studying the rows of winter vegetables like he was choosing his next words carefully. The silence stretched just long enough to make my pulse quicken. "I should tell you something." He looked back at me, something apologetic in his eyes. "I'm Fred, Imelda's boyfriend." My stomach dropped. He held up a hand gently. "Your cousin Juliet told me everything. About Thanksgiving, about how your family treats you. She thought I should see for myself who you really are. He looked around the farm, then back at me. I came because I needed to know if what she said was true. And now I do. Why? I asked quietly. Because the person I met today doesn't match the person they described at all, he said, voice steady. And I can't build a life with someone who looks down on people doing honest work. He left without asking for anything, without drama. Just a quiet apology and a car pulling away. That night, he ended things with Imelda. The next 48 hours passed in quiet tension, the farm unusually still, as I waited to see what ripple his decision would send through the family. Then my parents showed up unannounced, looking older than I remembered. My father's hands shook slightly. My mother's makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion in her face. Your sister's devastated, my mother said. Fred told her he can't be with someone who treats family the way she treated you. And then he told her the only reason we have a nice house is because of your money. I didn't invite them in. We stood on the porch, cold air between us. We didn't realize. My father's voice trailed off. You didn't want to realize, I said, not unkindly. You wanted the money without seeing where it came from or what it cost me. We're sorry. My mother's voice broke. We're so sorry, Florence. I nodded slowly. I believe you. But I can't keep supporting you financially. I need to invest in my own future now. We understand, my father said quietly. But I will help you find resources. I continued. Financial counseling, assistance programs, budgeting tools. I'll help you learn to stand on your own. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. They left quietly, and I felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but space for healing. Over the following 6 months, I poured that clarity into the farm, expanding the greenhouses, teaching new volunteers, and slowly watching the seeds of hard work grow into something larger than myself. The investment from the private firm expanded my business in unexpected ways, and it inspired me to give back to my community. I decided to host a community Thanksgiving, not because it was the holiday season, but to bring together all the people who had helped me grow and cared about this little farm. On a warm June afternoon, I stood in the middle of my expanded farm watching people fill every corner. Neighbors, students, volunteers, families I'd met through the agriculture program. Tables overflowed with food I'd grown, roasted vegetables, fresh salads, herb-crusted bread, strawberry pies made from berries picked that morning. I'd called it a community Thanksgiving, even though it was June, because gratitude doesn't need a calendar. Juliet found me near the greenhouse, her kids chasing chickens nearby. You did it, she said, smiling. You really did it. I smiled as she hugged me. Then I saw them, my parents, standing at the edge of the property near the parking area. They weren't approaching, weren't demanding attention, just watching. My mother's hand rested on my father's arm. They looked smaller somehow, older. I met my mother's eyes across the distance. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She just nodded once, slowly. I nodded back. Not forgiveness yet, but acknowledgement. They stayed for a few more minutes, then quietly left. The sun hung low and golden, casting everything in warm light. Laughter rose from the tables. Someone started playing guitar. Children ran through rows of tomato plants, careful not to damage anything. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of earth and growing things, the sound of voices that chose to be here. Years ago, I'd stood in my parents' kitchen doorway believing I needed their approval to matter. But standing here now, surrounded by people who saw my work as valuable and my presence as worthy, I understood something I'd been too afraid to believe back then. I was never the problem. I was just in the wrong room. I wandered between tables, exchanging smiles and handshakes. A child tugged at my sleeve, pointing proudly to a carrot he'd harvested, and I laughed, a sound that felt light and unburdened. Volunteers carried trays of roasted vegetables past the greenhouse, the aroma mingling with the faint scent of earth and wood smoke. For the first time, I felt the quiet contentment of belonging, not because I was accepted by my family, but because I had cultivated a space where value and care were freely given and received. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even triumph. It was simply a life I'd built for myself when I stopped trying to fit into someone else's version of worthy. And for the first time, I understood what it meant to truly come home. If you've ever had to walk away to find yourself, share your story below. And hit subscribe for the next one.